putting these up on my YouTube channel. I wasn't paying attention. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to go to the YouTube channel, here is my YouTube channel. Uh, it's pretty straightforward. It's not complicated. That's the name on it. Go ahead and subscribe. I'm putting a lot of these videos up there so that you guys can take screen records and screenshots and everything else. That's my YouTube channel. Just for the last 2 weeks, I've started paying attention to it and putting things up there because all you guys say like, hey, we need you to do this and we need you to do that, all that stuff. So, okay, all right. Anyways, let's go. Let's go. Let's do this. Okay. We got somebody requesting up. Let me see what they want to say real quick. Let me pause this. Okay. Let me see if I can make this bigger also. I'll change the format just so that people can see it a little bit better. Okay. Let me see if this works. Let me pause my video here. So the account goes like this. Muhammad was reciting Surah 53, chapter 53. And that chapter begins by the star, when it descends, your companion has neither strayed nor erred. That's 53 verses 1 to 2. He continues until he reaches the passage where he says in chapter 19, in verse 19 to 20, where he says, have you considered Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat, the third and the other? So, who are Allat, Al-Uzza, and Al-Manat? Allat, Al-Uzza, and Al-Manat are three well-known pagan goddesses worshipped by the Arabs. Okay? These are worshipped by the Arabs. All right? So, that is in chapter 53, 19 to 20. At that point, according to the story, Satan cast words into Muhammad's tongue. And that was in verse 21, which you don't find it today. It's changed. They abrogated it. The scholarship will tell you that. I'll show you all the evidence. So at that point, according to the story, Satan cast onto Muhammad's tongue, these are the exalted cranes, bird goddesses, and indeed their intercession is to be hoped for. So at this point, what has Muhammad said from 19, 20, and 21? He started off by saying, have you considered Allat, Al-Uzza, Al-Manat, the third and the other? That means he's saying, have you taken into consideration your pagan goddesses? Okay, and then he says, indeed, these are the exalted cranes. So he's saying, yep, they're goddesses, and indeed their intercession is to be hoped for. That means he's telling the Quraysh, who are pagans, oh, you know what? You should continue praying to your pagan goddesses. Clearly he says that. Okay? By the way, I've got lots of evidence, scholarship, everything. I'll show you everything. I'm just trying to build a case here for you guys at first. Then I'll take you into the scholarship. I'll take you into the tafsirs. I mean, I've got 50 pieces of evidence, 50, that he said it, okay? So he says, these are the exalted cranes, and indeed their intercession is to be hoped for. So what's going on in here is that basically the pagan Arabs, his Quraysh, are saying, look, I want to, consider Islam, but we've got our goddesses. We don't want to give up on our goddesses. So he says, gets frustrated very early on in Islam, and he says, you can go ahead and do it. You can do both. The idea was that these goddesses were heavenly beings who could carry prayers upward and act as intercessors with the supreme God, Allah. So on this account, Muhammad temporarily recited words that appeared to endorse pagan intercession. In other words, he delivered words promoting polytheism in the midst of a Quranic recitation. The claim is that this statement was originally associated with the passage following Surah 50, 20, and 21, but was later removed. The story then says that Jibreel rebuked Muhammad for reciting the words that did not come from God. And Muhammad allegedly admitted his mistakes, saying, I have fabricated things against God and have attributed to him words he did not speak. Ladies and gentlemen, it's there in the in your. I'll quickly show you here multiple multiple times, but here's in the Tabriz volume 6. It says here, okay, that evening Jabril came to him and reviewed the surah with him. And when he reached the two phrases which Satan had cast upon his tongue, he said, I did not bring you these two. Then the messenger of God said, I have fabricated things against God and have imputed to him words which he has not spoken. Imputed, that means I have associated, I have attributed words that he has not spoken. So again, I want to read this. I have fabricated things against God and have imputed, I have attributed to him, God, to Allah, words which he has not spoken. Now, I want to take you back real quick to the top of the
Is a
page.
false prophet. Paulus is a false prophet. Paulus is a false prophet, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay. So, anyways, so what we have here, guys, these guys are just gonna let me finish this and then I'll bring people up. Uh, Remember the two ways to spot a false prophet. What did we say earlier? If a prophet speaks a word in God's name that God did not command him to speak, he is a false prophet. Okay? If a prophet speaks a word in God's name that God did not command him to speak, he is a false prophet. What did Muhammad do? He gave them revelation saying they can, what? Continue to pray and worship their pagan goddesses and still be within the fold of Islam, still be Muslims. So he said something that Allah did not send him, revelations, and even Jabril, as we saw, told him, what are you doing? Allah didn't send this. What are you doing? Okay, so he broke that first rule. Second rule, if a prophet speaks in the name of other gods, if he promotes polytheism, he is a false prophet. What did he confess to doing? He confessed to sitting down and promoting polytheism by telling them they can continue praying to the pagan gods. Correct? So there you have it. All right? Now, what happens is in 2252, this is when Allah, and he gets very sad, by the way. Muhammad gets very sad. Okay? So it continues to say here, right, that after he says, I have fabricated things against God and have attributed to him words that he did not speak. In the aftermath, the narrative says that Muhammad was deeply distressed because he had committed and publicly promoted shirk. Oh, yes, he did shirk. Ladies and gentlemen, he committed shirk asgar. He committed major shirk. He committed the one kind of shirk that you cannot be, you once you're thrown out immediately out of Islam, you can't even repent and come back. When you attribute partners to Allah, when you attribute partners to him, like he did, you're out of Islam, you're out of the fold of it. But of course, the Quran is written by him, so he's going to give himself a break. But you know, that's the rules and regulations Islam is set up for everybody, not for Muhammad. Okay, so it says he remained grief-stricken and anxious till the revelation of Surah 2252 comes 8 years later. The question is, for 8 years are the pagans worshipping pagan gods and they are Muslims at that time? That's the question you got to ask. Because remember what I showed you, the timeline of the two verses right up here. Remember? The initial time when Muhammad says these satanic verses was in the 5th year of the Meccan period. That is 53 chapters, chapter 53, verses 19 to 21 is during the Meccan period. The chapter 52, verses 25 to 78 were revealed in the Medina period, 14th year. That means, ladies and gentlemen, that's 8 years gap that Allah did not come and say, oh, it's okay, I abrogated it. So what's happening for 8 years? Okay? So that's happening for 8 years. Let me stop here and I'll bring people up. But this is when Allah comes and says in chapter 22:52, aftermath, after it's already happened. He says, and Muhammad's very sad, and Jabril has come and told him what you've done, and Muhammad's confessed to saying this stuff. He says, Allah says, never did we send a messenger or a prophet before you, but when he did recite the revelation, that means it has never happened that it has always happened to a prophet. Allah's coming now and saving his kid. He's saving him. He's saving him. Okay. So he says, never did we send a messenger or prophet before you, but when he did recite the revelation or narrated or spoke, Shaitan, Satan, threw some falsehood in it. But Allah abolishes that which Shaitan throws in, and then Allah establishes his revelations. So what he's saying is that don't worry, I took care of it. Oh, it happens to others too. It happens to others too. Remember, in Islam, they say Muhammad is sinless and prophets don't commit major sins. But right here, he's saying that Shaitan has done it to other prophets too. This problem has happened with other prophets too. But forget the other prophets. Right now, we are sitting on concentrating on Muhammad. So, and he says, then I correct what has already been said, and then I clean it up. I do abrogation. So it's already been said. It's not like he's doing it beforehand. It's already the act has happened and he said it. And if he said it, he's out of the fold of Islam. Now, let me start bringing up folks out here one at a time. I'm going to go from bottom up because those are the ones who came first. I'm going to bring a couple of you guys in. I don't know how many of you guys are waiting, and some go away. So if you're not going to be up here, and mods, we block the moment they sit down and start cussing. Okay? There we go. AIT, what's up? Welcome to the panel. Are you Muslim? AIT, you're on the panel. AIT. I don't know. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Thank you for coming up, AIT. You can request up later on. All right, Tambani, how you doing? What is safety off? What do you mean? Tambani, you're up here. All right, he's just requesting for the sake of it. We had 6 of them in the line, but you know what? They all want to do it really quickly. So let me continue with this. No problem. Let me continue. All right. So here it is. Now you know this, right? Now I'm going to take you to the tafsir of that very verse. This is the verse 2252, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, 2252. I'm going into the tafsirs of it, right? That's the verse so that now I will read to you Jalalain's. I will read to you Jalalain that he will tell you exactly the same thing that I told you. Then I'm going to take you to Tabri's book that will tell you additional information that I gave. Then I'm going to show you some other evidences, okay? So we're going to start with the tafsir of 2252 Jalalain. In it he says, and we did not send before you any messenger Rasul. This is a prophet who has been commanded to deliver a message. Or prophet Nabi, one who has not been commanded to deliver anything. Disregard that. It's just blah, 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 whatever it says, okay? Don't worry about it, okay? Now the meat and potato starts. This is where Jalalain will narrate to you what I said. But that when he recited, i.e. the prophet recited the scripture, Satan cast into his recitation what is not from the Quran, but which those to whom he, the prophet, had been sent, i.e. the Qurayshi, would find pleasing. So, right here it says, he recited something. It hasn't told you what is recited yet. He recited something that Satan had put into his tongue, and the people who are receiving the revelation are very pleased with it. Okay, it's going to tell you what he said and who these people were. I've already told you these people were the Quraysh tribe. This is early Islam. He's trying to convert his own tribe into being Muslims. But let's read on. The prophet had during an assembly of the men of Quraysh, boom, see, the Quraysh tribe. After reciting the following verses from Surah Al-Najm, that is the chapter 53, have you considered Lat and Uzza and Manat, the third one? So what did the prophet recite? Have you considered it? He's telling the Quraysh tribe, have you considered them? These are your pagan goddesses. You know, you should continue praying to them. Which is chapter 53, 19 to 20, added as a result of Satan casting them onto his tongue without the prophets, being aware of it, the following words. So now, after it initially says, have you considered Lat, Uzza, and Manat, he added something else. That was verse 21, which got abrogated. So it's telling you what he added in here, the abrogated stuff. It's saying, he said the following words: those are high flying cranes, al gharnik, and indeed their intercession is to be hoped for. You see? He said, hey, have you considered their pagan goddesses? They're high flying cranes, they're pagan goddesses, and they should, you can continue praying to them. You can continue praying to them, no problem, and be in the fold of Islam. So he's telling them, go ahead, no problem. Those are high flying cranes, and indeed their intercession is to be hoped for. And so the men of Quraysh were thereby delighted. So the audience who he's trying to tell, the Quraysh who he's trying to convert, and he's getting frustrated they're not, who he's told them, yeah, you can pray to your pagan goddesses, they were delighted. Their reaction is awesome. Jabril, however, later informed him, the prophet, of this, that Satan had cast onto his tongue, and he was grieved by it. So Jabril comes and says, what have you done? And Muhammad was grieved by it. He was saddened by it. What happens then? But was subsequently comforted. He was all saddened, but he was comforted by Allah with this following verse. Which verse? The verse 22:52. That he might be reassured of God's pleasure, thereat God abrogates and nullifies what Satan had cast. Okay? So Allah comes and says, what verse? The same verse we read right here, 22:52. And we did not send before you any messenger or prophet, except that when he spoke, Satan threw into it some misunderstanding. But Allah abolishes that which Satan throws in, and then Allah makes precise his verses. So, exactly what we read, and they're telling you the tafsir, what happened. Allah said, don't worry, it happens to everybody, I've taken care of it. I've abrogated it. But Muhammad has already committed the shirk. He has already committed the shirk. Now, I'm going to give you another source for this, which is in Tabri's book. Here's Tabri's book, okay? And that's the chapter about Satan cast false revelation on the messenger of God's tongue. And page 111, it says here, this is interesting, it says here, okay? A little bit more information, okay? When Satan cast onto his tongue two phrases, these are high-flying cranes, verily their intercession is to be desired. He, that means Muhammad, uttered them and went on to complete the surah. He went on to finishing the chapter. When he prostrated himself at the end of the surah. So he prostrated after he said that revelation, the entire chapter 53, which included that they can pray to their pagan goddesses. Then the whole company, i.e. the Quraysh, prostrated themselves with him. The next line is I don't know why they add this stuff, but anyways, I'll just read it. It's meaningless. Al-Walid raised some dust to his forehead and bowed over that, since he was a very old man and could not prostrate himself. Whatever. Now, continues. They, i.e. the Quraysh, was satisfied with what Muhammad had uttered. And then the Quraysh said, we recognize that it is God who gives life and death, who creates and who provides sustenance. Sustenance being food, but watch what they also say. But if these gods of ours, pay attention, the Quraysh are telling Muhammad, but if these gods of ours, plural, gods of ours, intercede for us with him, with Allah, and if you give them a share, that means you are going to associate partners with Allah, we are with you. We are with you. We are with you. If these gods of ours intercede for us with him, with Allah, okay, and if you give them a share, that means partnership with Allah, we are with you. So they said, we'll become Muslim, yes, if you allow us to do that. That evening, Jabril came to him and reviewed the surah with him. And when he reached the two phrases which Satan had cast upon his tongue, he said, I did not bring you these two. Here is Jabril saying, God did not say, give you this revelation. I did not bring you these two. Then the messenger of God said, I have fabricated things against Allah and have imputed, i.e., have associated, I have attributed to him, to Allah, words which he has not spoken. Boom. Okay? That's in Tabri's book also. So again, ladies and gentlemen, I bring you back to these first two things we started on. This is critical. This is very critical to understand this. Okay? What did we say? We said, where is it? There it is. We said we have two ways to spot a false prophet. If a prophet speaks a word or revelation in God's name that God did not command him to speak, he is a false prophet. Muhammad did that, check mark. Or if a prophet speaks in the name of other gods, i.e., if he promotes polytheism, he is a false prophet. Muhammad did that, check mark. And we said, Shirk Akbar, the major shirk, the highest form of shirk, is if you associate partners with Allah, you are thrown out of Islam. You cannot even come back. You cannot do the repentance criteria. Nah, you're done. Khalas, finished. Muhammad did that. Muhammad did that. Okay? Now, let's see. Someone wants to come up here. We'll get them up here. I'll pause my recording. See what these guys want, and then we'll continue. All right? They came, they cussed, so we let them go. All right. Okay, now I'm going to take you to more things. Okay, remember, guys, don't forget this hadith. Everybody, you should bookmark that hadith too. Okay, it's a nice one, which says here, Sunnah al-Nasai 3773. In 3773, you have a Jew who comes and tells Muhammad, you are committing shirk. You are associating partners with Allah. And then Muhammad then listens to the Jew and changes himself. But he has done it. He has a habit of doing this. It says in here, a Jew came to the Prophet and said, you are setting up rivals to Allah, partners with Allah, and associating others with Allah. And the Jew says, because you say, saying Muhammad, you say whatever Allah wills and what you, Muhammad, will. And you also say by the Kaaba, you swear by the Kaaba. So what did Muhammad do? Muhammad then commanded them, if they wanted to swear an oath, to say, by the Lord of the Kaaba, he changed it, and to say, whatever Allah wills, then what you will. He changed it. So a Jew comes to the Prophet and told him that you are committing shirk, guys. This is a very important one here. 3773. You see, he has a habit. He has a habit of doing this stuff. He has a habit of doing this. So don't forget that we have a lot of pieces of evidence. Wait, you're going to get boom shakalaka with evidence, guys. There's going to be all kinds of evidence coming in here. If you think this is evidence that I've showed you, I've got a lot of them. Okay, I've got a lot. Now we've got someone else requesting up. Let's see if they want to come up. And School of Yeshua. Hey, I'm only getting Muslims up here, dude. School of Yeshua. I'm getting Muslims up here, brother. So if you're Muslim, you can come on up and we can discuss this. All right. By the way, if you're curious, why would Allah? I mean, why would would Allah allow that? Why did Allah allow it and only afterwards He came and abrogated it? That's because He tells you in the very next verse, 20 to 53. So He may make what Satan throws in a trial for those whose hearts is disease and whose hard of heart. And indeed, the wrongdoers are in extreme dissension. So He kind of gives you a hint, like why did He not stop it from before? Apparently, He allows that as a trial. I got more to talk about that, what happened with the trial and whose heart was diseased. But let's come with more evidence. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a Islamic scholar. This guy His book is Before Orthodoxy, the Satanic Verses. Before Orthodoxy, the Satanic Verses in Early Islam. Sahab, Sahaba, Sahab Ahmad. This book is $4 on Kindle right now in Amazon. So if you want that book, get it. Okay, Before Orthodoxy, the Satanic Verses, $4 only. What did he do? Well, this guy went out and found 50 narrative reports, riwayas. What are riwayas? Those are narration reports, those are reports. Before the current hadith science came around and methodology came around, for about 250 years, they didn't have it. I.e., the hadith science and methodology that you see today comes 250 years after Muhammad. So for 250 years, the Sahaba, the companions, the Tabayin, the Tabayin, they were all, the generations were all writing reports, narrative reports. It was called riwayas. So this gentleman went and looked at all 50 riwayas and he put it in his book, every detail. All his riwayas, he put it in there. And he looked at them, if they had the chain of narrations, where it is, every detail he had, he put it all together. And he said that the reports of the Satanic Verses incident were recorded by virtually every compiler of a major biography of Muhammad in the first 2 centuries of Islam. So what he found, and by the way, I have the book. I have the book, ladies and gentlemen. I have the book. And here is the book also. Okay? And in here, you will see the 50 narrative reports. 50, look at that. 50 reports. All the reports are here. And I've gone through all 50 and I've created a document from it. All 50 confirming Muhammad did say the Satanic verses. Now, what he says is that the first 2 generations of Islam, almost universally, he says, universally, everybody, companions and Sahaba and all those folks, circa universally, said, yes, Muhammad did utter the Satanic verses. He did tell them to worship pagan goddesses. But then later scholarship in Islam comes, and as you understand, scholarship in Islam are not academic people. They are really there to put band-aids and protect and do taqiyya most of the time. That's why you see their scholarship coming in and changing a lot of core doctrines and everything else much later on. So the scholarship later on comes and says, oh, we cannot have this. We cannot have confess to Muhammad saying this stuff. So we are going to start lying and saying, no, he didn't. Now, this is what this Islamic scholar finds among 50 reports. I showed you the collection of the reports, and he's got it from everybody and all big time folks and everything else. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to show you something where how I categorize the reports. I took their reports and I categorized it in categories. Strongest category, strong category, category by whether it was a tafsir, because he could, those narrative reports could be on a tafsir, on a hadith, on a seerah or a biography, whatever. So for example, just to give you an example of what I did, here's this categorized: strength tag, strongest. Genre source, tafsir, because it could be a hadith, it could be a seerah. This one is tafsir. Riwayah 41, okay, that's the narrative report 41. Whose book was it? Abu Samarkandi's book, Bahar al-Ulam. The form is musnad, that means it's got a complete chain. So it is a Sahih Isnad. Why? Where does it appear again? In Samarkandi's book. Attribution target, Ibn Abbas, Sahabi. Sahabi confirmation tag, yes or no? Yes. Sahaba confirms authority. Okay, reason because Ibn Abbas. Here's the musnad, here's the chain. All of the chain. Okay, chain of narrators. Done. Author's credibility and everything else. Done. Okay, the next one. Riwayah 43. Strength tag strong. Genre source hadith. Where it appears. Al-Bazar. Okay, that's the one. Attribution tag. This is from a different chain of narrators that go to Ibn Abbas too. Sahaba confirmation, yes. Okay? Competing transmission. Competing transmission. There are other transmissions also who are doing this. This one here is Sahih. Chain of narrators. Different than the previous chain of narrators. Most of them. Okay? So I've broken it down like this. We've got 50 pieces of evidence, folks. 50 pieces of evidence. This is not, you're not playing with chump chain here. We're not playing games, bro. We're not playing games. We are coming with the hammer. We're coming with the hammer on this. Okay? Now, let's see. We've got two people requesting up. Let me pause my recording. Back to recording. Back to recording. Okay, now I showed you the evidence, all this stuff here. We still continue. We got more evidence. 50 pieces of evidence is out there. Someone else. We have, ladies and gentlemen. So again, the previous book, for roughly the first 2 centuries of Islam, the Satanic verses incident appears to have been widely accepted in early Muslim tradition. That's what that Islamic scholar of that book is saying. And only later did major Islamic theologians increasingly reject it as heretical or unacceptable. Okay? Now, this is Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah says, and he acknowledges that the first two generations of Islam did say it. He acknowledges that that was said. He acknowledges it. In his book, he also acknowledges there was the later scholars, some of the later scholars also, kind of refuted. But remember, after the first two generations, the later scholarship is going like, oh, we can't say this stuff. So they have to put a band-aid on it. Muhammad's companions, and the Tabi'een, they all said it happened. The early Islamic scholars, Salaf, this is Ibn Taymiyyah says, collectively considered the verses of the cranes in accordance with the Quran. And from the later coming scholars, Khalaf, who follow the opinion of the early scholars, they say that these traditions have been recorded with authentic chain of narration, and it is impossible to deny them. And the Quran itself is itself testifying it. Ibn Taymiyyah in Majmu' al-Fatah. Here I've got it in Majmu' al-Fatah where he talks about the same thing, and he says, you know what? Yeah, there are people, the early generation said yes, he did say it. Okay? But I don't depend on Ibn Taymiyyah, by the way. Okay? Now, modern scholarship. This is Jonathan A.C. Brown. He is a Muslim. He's a pro-Palestinian. His father-in-law was deported from the US for funding T groups. Go figure. All right. He is a professor at Georgetown University. And he says the Satanic verses incident also happened. Even in his book, he says, yes, it did. The early ones, he says, confirming the early ones said, all the early 200 years of early Islam. By the way, Muhammad said his first 2 or 3 generations are the best generations, okay? So definitely he said that. I have another author, Orientalist, Robert Wright, in his book In the Evolution of God, also says, indeed, at moments when collaboration with the pagans seemed attractive, Muhammad's tolerance grew so large that he was willing to give up monotheism itself. This, at least, is the apparent upshot of the Satanic verses. 3 goddesses, Allat, Al-Uzza, Al-Manat, who had a big following in Arabia and whom some pagans considered daughters of Allah, acknowledging their existence and power would have made it easier for Muhammad to do business with their adherents, and some of their adherents were influential. So he says, actually, the reason why he also did that is because Muhammad does business, and so they were all pagans, so they didn't like it. So he said it could also help from a business perspective. A nearby town where some Meccan elites owned property featured a shrine to Allah. So some rich people around, elites, had a shrine to Allah, one of the pagan goddesses. Apparently, Muhammad succumbed to the temptation. This is Robert Wright in his book, okay? The Evolution of God. All right. There is a Soviet well-known scholar among people who understand and know about scholarship in Islam. He's a respected scholar of Islam. His name is V.N. London, Lundin. He said, among the Arabs of Central Arabia, the goddesses Uzza, together with Allat and Manat, formed a triad of goddesses, daughters of Allah. And in the south of the Central Arabia, Al Uzza acted as the wife of Allah and the mother of Allat and Manat. So these are very much high goddesses, ranking goddesses. Okay? All right. So we have given you all this piece of information, all of this stuff. Okay? I want you to understand that ultimately, what did we conclude and what did we show? We have shown you the very first thing again that we said Muhammad is a false prophet because he broke the two rules of prophecy, right? Of what would make a prophet a true prophet or a false prophet. The two rules again: if a prophet speaks a word in God's name and that God did not command him to speak, i.e., he gives a revelation saying it's in God's revelation, but God did not command him to say or give him that revelation, he is a false prophet. Or if a prophet speaks in the name of other gods, if he promotes polytheism, in other words, he is a false prophet. And finally, we showed you that when we look at the timeline of the two verses, the original timeline of when he said the satanic verses was in the Meccan period, right here. It was in the fifth year. It was in the fifth year of his prophethood. When the relief comes, when Allah says and Jibril gives a relief and abrogates the verse, it is in the 14th year of his prophethood in Medina, in a different, complete area. So for 8 years, what was happening here is a question. The pagans were allowed to worship pagan gods and be Muslim. Because if he came and abrogated and said, no, you can't do it, and if Muhammad was informed by Jibril in this year, then that means for 8 years this continued. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I conclude so far. Hopefully, you guys have seen the evidence. By the way, those 50 reports are just terrific, dude. You can't. I mean, this is the hammer, bro. We're coming with the hammer.